Okay, got it. Okay, is that good? So, will that little box go away where it says meeting is now streaming live on custom live streaming service? Will that go away after a while, or that's going to be?
I think so. Or
Okay, yeah, whatever. It's just a little one. It's just covering up. Just covering up on the volume. So we can begin. Om Agyan Tamirandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshuram Anitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitanamane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvari Pasachade Shatarane Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Panchakalpatubhyascha Kritasindhu Vesha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha. So text 26, chapter 3, Karma Yoga, Bhagavad-gita As It Is, translations and purports by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti-vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Saka Kamanya Vid Vamso Yakta Karvani Bharata Kuryad Vad Vid Vams Tata Shaktas Chakshir Lokasagar Sagaham. As the ignorant perform their duties with attachment to results, the learned may similarly act but without attachment, for the sake of leading people on the right path. So this is right after Krishna is telling Arjuna that there's no work for him. Actually, it starts out actually 27, 28. 17, 18, 19. Therefore, without being attached to the fruits of activities, one should act as a matter of duty, for by working without attachment, one attains Krishna. So this is the idea, to have that sense of detachment, which is being described in this verse, without attachment. So Krishna explains how other, in the past, like Janaka, kings like Janaka, they perform their acts just for the sake of educating people. And for Krishna, there is real no prescribed duty, but he performs the prescribed duties just to teach others. Because if he failed, he said, to engage in carefully performing prescribed duties, certainly the world would follow his path. And the world, as he decided, would be put into ruination, and that would cause unwanted population, which was one of Arjuna's concerns in the first chapter of the Bhagavad-gita. And we can see that this type of population, as being described before by Arjuna, creates an unsavory situation in the world. And here Krishna says, destroys the peace of all living beings. So here we have that Krishna is explaining now what Arjuna is meant to do, because ignorant perform their duties with attachment. They're attached to the fruit of results of their work, or they want to keep those fruits of the results. And he's telling that people that know that they're not material body, and that the karma phala, the results of their action, belongs actually to Krishna, they can also act in the same way, but without the same attachment. In other words, giving the fruits of their labors to Krishna, and in that way lead the people on the right path, which is part of the 22nd verse. I think it's the 22nd verse of this. Yad acharati shestas tadeva tararjanam. Whatever action a great man performs, common men follow. And whatever standard he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. And so we can see that there is a great responsibility for those who are engaged in quote unquote material activities to set the proper example. This is nicely explained in the purport where Arjuna had asked, how can someone know you at the time of death? By practicing this process of yoga. And so, of course, we know that Krishna tells Arjuna, if you can think of me, then you'll go to me, and if whatever you think of, that's where you'll end up. I guess you could say that's where you'll end. But then he ends it that he says that you should always think of me in the form of Krishna, at the same time carry out your prescribed duties as fighting. In other words, whatever our prescribed duties are, we're meant to carry them out. And with our activities dedicated to Krishna and our mind of intelligence fixed on Krishna, then we go to Krishna. So there's a very nice, and what would you say, what I'm looking for? Purport that's important for everyone. And Prabhupada says this instruction to Arjuna is important for all people engaged in material activities. So any one of us, we all have to do, material activities. The Lord does not say that one should give up their prescribed duties or engagements. One can continue them and at the same time think of Krishna. So how is that done? And Prabhupada says by chanting Hare Krishna. I had a nice friend who came over today to visit, and he was explaining to me, I'm not explaining, but saying that, it's such a huge thing, there's this thing and that thing, and he's just kind of new to Krishna consciousness in the last few years, slowly entering in, and the vastness of Krishna consciousness is so huge for him. He's like, it's like being in a tsunami form, a tsunami of information. I said, just take it easy, just take it easy, slow. Just an intelligent person takes what is described that simplifies even the most complicated thing. Just we have to, what would you say? I don't want to say dumb it down because that would make it sound like we're not, but just like slow it down a little bit so that we can absorb and understand the full import, because we really, really want to attain Krishna. So that process is being described here. And by chanting Hare Krishna, it frees one from the material contamination and engages our intelligence and mind in Krishna. And that's what happens by chanting Krishna's name. We will attain the supreme planet of Krishna Loka. So that's a little bit of the history on this verse coming up. So anyone here a good reader? And have you read the purport to engage everybody? Otherwise, I can call it an English teacher, former English teacher. Everybody's so shy. Everybody speaks English, I think.
Marge, if you like, I can read. Wait, are we 325 or 26 you want me to read?
Purport 25.
Okay.
And then we're going to do a reflection, so everyone pay attention to the verse and purport. We want to have everybody open this up. Let's Shalom us that we should read the scriptures together, and we should examine it from different angles of vision. So I see through one type of lens, somebody else sees through another type of lens. We all have a different mode of nature. The modes of nature are the three primary colors: goodness, passion, and ignorance. And we all have a different color that we see through. So we can see these verses and purports from different angles according to our current situation. So let's open it up a little bit if we can.
Okay. So Maharaj, I'll read the purport only to 325 then. Correct? Okay. Okay, here goes. A person in Krishna consciousness and a person not in Krishna consciousness are differentiated by different desires. A Krishna conscious person does not do anything which is not conducive to development of Krishna consciousness. He may even act exactly like the ignorant person who is too much attached to material activities, but one is engaged in such activities for the satisfaction of his sense gratification, whereas the other is engaged for the satisfaction of Krishna. Therefore, the Krishna conscious person is required to show people how to act and how to engage the results of action for the purpose of Krishna consciousness.
Any thoughts from this, from our esteemed group? We were trying to make this interactive. Yuga, it looks like you have some thoughts. I'm just speculating. You're going back and forth to the book.
I agree. I
You
agree
agree?
that
Huh?
yeah, I agree that we can see, even though we practicing Krishna consciousness, and sometimes we don't want to go to work, or we using it as an opportunity to serve Krishna. And for example, in my situation, I bake, so people that I work with, they already for years eating prasadam almost every week.
That's not,
And also Krishna, I work in a hospital, so it's a lot of communication with patients, and Krishna give me a lot of experiences where I am learning how to communicate with people nicely. Even the slightest mistake that would not be noticed for the other person, but it definitely brings to my attention certain qualities that should be improved. But basically, that's improving my quality. Let's say that's improving my qualities. So I understand that my work is actually being done as a service and also as a mercy of the Lord to his devotee, because he allows me to grow spiritually, even though seemingly I'm doing material like a work like everyone else, but it's yeah, that's the thoughts that I had.
Yeah, this chapter is called Karma Yoga. So karma just means our activities, and yoga means linking our activities, linking all of our activities. We'll get that later on in the Gita, Yampa, excuse me, Yat Karoshi, Jadasnasi, Jet Dahosi, Danti, that whatever we do, whatever action, whatever we give away, whatever austerities perform, whatever we eat, we do that as an act of love for Krishna. In other words, we combine all of our activities, or we dovetail the activities to actually remember Krishna. And we can remember Krishna no matter what. I mean, Arjuna is expected to remember Krishna while fighting the battle of Kurukshetra. We can remember Krishna in the classroom or in the office or anywhere. All we have to do is see, because Krishna's within everything. There's no place that Krishna doesn't reside. And so we just have to train ourselves. I've given this example so many times. I heard Prabhupada give two different types of, I heard a second type of example for this the other day. So Prabhupada said, just like the tape recording machine, we just push the button and it works. We're not sure how it works, but if it doesn't work, we don't know what to do. So we call what he called the mechanic for the tape recorder. And the tape recorder mechanic comes in and adjusts a few things, works again. We're seeing the tape recorder, the mechanic sees the tape recorder, but because he's been trained to understand how the inner parts of the recorder work, and he can see that what we can't see. And so in the same way, devotees are trained to see Krishna as the Sarvasham Visam Sarvam Yat Kinchan Jagat, that he's the owner and the controller of everything. So whatever we see, we know that it belongs to Krishna. So we automatically see the owner. And Lavanga can attest, I've given this example a million times, that if I'm at your house, and and you have a cup of tea, and I leave my glasses on the table, and I walk out, you'll say, Mars, you forgot your glasses. It's just a pair of glasses, but you know they're connected to me, so you see me inside the glasses, even though I'm not inside the glasses. It's because I'm the quote-unquote temporary, devotees say temporary owner, but Krishna is the permanent owner of everything. So everything we see has to be connected to Krishna. Everything we do is connected to Krishna. And so very good example, using your life experience or your life, your life's occupation to see Krishna. Anything else from the esteemed group of Vaishnavas here? Nitai Gaurasundar, do I have to call on you, or you can volunteer some of your sage advice here?
Well, thank you, Maharaj, but I work in hospital too, but I learn from my patients, and unfortunately my patients, which I treat, or then learning curve every day. They don't even forget their name, forget whatever it is. So, how to see
psychiatrist. So a lot of times people come in, they don't even know who they are.
Not even psychiatry, especially I'm geriatric psychiatrist working with the patients with the memory issues and delusions. So it is, and then I would you say that I feel quite grateful that I am involved with this movement and knowing Bhagavad-gita, knowing Srila Prabhupada movement, how is giving me, it also provides the detachment from this, what is happening in the world and what is happening with particular patients. So the Krishna conscious person does not do anything which is not conducive to development of Krishna consciousness. So I can see that what had happened in getting there's this history of the patient, what they have done, why they have come to this. And there's some things happen in Krishna's word, as you said, everything, he knows everything. So why someone has this kind of disease or problem, there's some reason behind that. I cannot discuss that because of this. This is confidential, but there are almost always there is some reason behind it.
Yeah. So what's the difference? What's the difference between Mr. William Smith that comes into your ward there at the hospital that thinks that he doesn't know who he is, or the ordinary man that's, say, a carpenter or a doctor or a plumber or a trash picker upper for the city that thinks he's a garbage man or thinks he's a carpenter or thinks what's the difference between they're also misidentifying themselves with something that they're not. This is a very good thing that Prabhupada has taught it. Remember, he said, "Who's crazy?" That famous lecture in New York City at 26 Second Avenue, where we're at today, technically. He wrote that little pamphlet, "Who's Crazy?" Because if you misidentify yourself with something that you're not, then you end up under the care of Nitai Gaurasundar or someone who has the same type of job as he does. Not much difference, isn't it, when you really get down to it? If I think that I'm American, if I think that I'm a man, if I think I'm 70 years old.
Yes, Maharaj, that's the problem. I was listening this morning to Loknath Maharaj lecture when he was saying that in India, when they say that the devotees from Western, they are foreigners. So who are we? Our home is not India, or not America. We came from. It should be our home is a spiritual world. That's why Prabhupada said back home, back to Godhead. So this is not that the identification with this material world causes all the problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other thoughts or reflections? What's the difference between the person in Krishna consciousness and the person that's differentiated from Krishna consciousness according to this person? How do How do we tell the difference? In the purport says, Nita touched on the person that the devotee, he only does his activities in conjunction to Krishna, and the materialistic person is too much attached and does his activities for sense gratification. So that you can see the difference. You can see the difference. And one of the things that this teaches us is that we have our morning sadhana or whenever our sadhana is. It's like I don't want to say vaccine because I don't want to be a pro-vax, anti-vax. I'm just saying it's like a medicine that'll protect us. The morning our spiritual practices protect us from falling into the illusion when we're out in the material atmosphere, thinking ourselves to we're really a fish out of water, as the analogy goes. The fish out of water cannot be happy no matter what you give it on the land. If the fish comes out of the water onto the land, there's no way you can help that fish be happy other than putting him back in the water. And in the same way, we belong in the spiritual world. And nothing we give ourselves in this material world, no degree, no job, no money, no companion, and whatever it may be, will actually satisfy us in this material world. The only way we can actually become truly satisfied is to go back in the water of the spiritual world. Balaram Shakti, you got a heart up there. You have a comment or something up, Balaram Shakti? Are you driving? He's not coming too. Maybe he can't.
Yeah, I was thinking that, it's just that with this verse, it's just a difference between doing something for someone else or something higher versus just doing things for yourself. That was just a takeaway that I was gathering.
Yeah, very, very nice. Yeah, and we see that even on a material level, that people that help other people, that give themselves to others rather than just to themselves. And you'll see this in the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad-gita, where Krishna goes through the different levels. Always think of me. Well, if you can't do that, then practice bhakti yoga. Or you can't do that, then do this. But finally he says, just try to become detached. And in one of the purports there, Prabhupada says that maybe due to some social or familial obligations, one may not be able to outwardly practice Krishna consciousness, but one should give of themselves to others so that they can just get a little detached from this material world that way. That even that little bit of a detachment from this place helps us advance in Krishna consciousness. Anything else from our? Yes.
Maharaj, I could say one. So it's kind of funny. It's not exactly funny, but something funny that I'm thinking of or odd had a strong impression on me. And so I'm an attorney for my work, and I deal with lots of rough situations, and sometimes having to be clever, sometimes dealing with people who are aggressive, all kinds of stuff, and so sometimes I have to, I think like when Prabhupada, I think some devotees commented they were struck by how when Prabhupada was walking on the beach and a dog would come by, and Prabhupada just sort of, I guess he did something with his cane and said something in a way that the dog just became submissive and didn't mess with Prabhupada at all. So and so I think we understand from Prabhupada's teachings that when you're dealing with living entities, people or otherwise, humans or otherwise, sometimes to be saintly doesn't always mean to be sweet and smiling and all that. Sometimes, you can you deal in a harsh way when you're dealing with a person of a certain mindset, or a living entity with a certain mindset. So I was just thinking of something that happened on my job maybe a week and a half or 2 weeks ago. And I did something that I coordinated with one of my colleagues, dealing with some people who are very rough in their dealings and doing some very, in my opinion, some very underhanded things. And we're sort of fighting with them in a way to try to, I don't know, to try to deal with some litigation about who's running it. So I did something that was kind of clever back, and it was a little tricky. And then one of my colleagues who was friends with the people who I outmaneuvered, he said he was speaking very sternly to me, and he accused me of being shady and of knowing better. And I was just thinking about it, but I think what I did was just right. But I was just thinking about it from the point, from a materialist point of view. Sometime, of course, he said that because he was actually although he was working with me, he was friends also with the people in other cases who, in this case, we were trying to outmaneuver. So it was sort of a conflict of interest. But in any case, my point was that for non-devotees, they tend to look at things kind of in a category. They put things into categories, and the categories that they put things into have to do with sort of what suits them and their material nature, and they can't necessarily see like the good behind what may be bad. So sometimes like people would expect that a devotee, if the more advanced you are, means that you're always smiling and you never express any sort of frustration, as Prabhupada would, right? Sometimes. So here, I think what I did was good, and I try to lead my life in a way that ultimately I'm trying to, I like Devotees Association. I try to do things for devotees when I can and so forth, and I try to preach when I can too. So I don't think that by nature there's anything really shady about my motives. I was just trying to do my job as best I could, but from his point of view, it was shady. So anyway, I was just thinking, this is really this sort of a very nuanced example that demonstrates what this purport is talking about, how, when you do something that it appears in one way, it doesn't necessarily mean that your consciousness is the same as someone else who does the very same thing. So anyway, I was a little bit long-winded, but I thought that really came to mind based on this.
Thank you. Thank you. Anything else from our esteemed group? If not, we'll go to text 26. Okay, 26. Na buddhi bedam jayed agyanam kamaktanginam joshayet sababkarmani yavid vidvan yukta samacharan, so as not to disrupt the minds of ignorant men attached to the fruitive results of prescribed duties. A learned person should not induce him to stop work. Rather, by working in the spirit of devotion, he should engage them in all sorts of activities for the gradual development of Krishna consciousness. Report, George.
This, I
Hey,
can't read
that's
this.
just aham eva vedyo.
That is the end of all Vedic rituals. All rituals, all performances of sacrifice, and everything that is put into the Vedas, including the directions of material activities, are meant for understanding Krishna, who is the ultimate goal of life. But because the conditioned souls do not know anything beyond sense gratification, they study the Vedas to that end. Though sense regulations, however, one is gradually elevated to Krishna consciousness. Therefore, a realized soul in Krishna consciousness should not disturb others in their activities or understanding, but he should act by showing how the results of all work can be dedicated to the service of Krishna. The learned Krishna conscious person may act in such a way that the ignorant person working for sense gratification may learn how to act and how to behave. Although the ignorant man is not to be disturbed in his activities, still a slightly developed Krishna conscious person may directly be engaged in the service of the Lord without waiting for other Vedic formulas. For this fortunate man, there is no need to follow the Vedic rituals, because in direct Krishna consciousness, one can have all of the results simply by following the prescribed duties of a particular person.
Follow one's prescribed duties. Okay. Any thoughts or reflections from our group? Gaurav, you're a little bit fuzzy. Your camera is not working. They're all fuzzed out. Any thoughts from you, Gaurav? You have to turn your microphone on. Any reflection, Gaurav? Anything that you bring that you receive from this purport? You have to turn your microphone on.
Well, maybe it's important for the new devotees, because some new devotees, that when they come to join Krishna consciousness, they want to start working right away, and that would be wrong. So for the new devotee, the example of the senior devotees like Atma, who just goes and does his job as a lawyer, even though he probably would just want to serve Krishna in any renounced way, but he does that. So certain things, it's just not advisable to stop working, even if you want to practice Krishna consciousness. And some grihasthas, they are very advanced in spiritual practice, but they still showing by example, they still go to work. So
Very good.
that's the thought.
Yeah, it's a good example. Another, there's a verse, I'm trying to think of where it's at. One who's not attached through auspicious or inauspicious activity actually sees things as they really are. So sometimes you'll see Vaishnavas that are maybe a little adverse to going to the workplace because you're working with the non-devotees, or you're working with the karmis, you're working with the meat eaters, you're working with the drunkards. And of course, that association isn't very palatable, but the Gita says that one should not be attached to auspicious or inauspicious circumstances. One should be neutral. In other words, if we have a proper understanding, there is no auspicious, well, besides Krishna consciousness. I mean, Krishna conscious is auspicious in all regards, but there's nothing auspicious in the material world, on a material level. Probably very, very, very graphically describes it as wet stool or dry stool. Kuvishaya suvishaya is wet stool. Stool is stool. They have this thing where they make these patties and they stick them on the walls in India. And the wet stools, the dry stool is looking at the wet ones saying, oh, you're all wet and slimy, and the dry stool, and I'm all this and that, but the dry stool doesn't know he's going into the fire. And so, whether you're wet or dry stool, you're still stool, And so all material activities, whether they look, nice, maybe a nice environment, maybe a mode of goodness environment, but the mode of goodness can still captivate us. The mode of goodness can still capture us because it gives us a sense of, there's a sense of material happiness that's there. It's a little bit elevated from the mode of passion and ignorance. And there's a little sense of having knowledge that makes us feel a little bit above the rest. And so we can become captured by that mode of goodness. And so I have to be very, very careful not to be involved in anything in the material, not everything can be utilized. And whatever one's nature is, one can certainly find an occupation for that, or certainly find some occupation. I mean, when I joined the movement, I don't know anybody that had a job. We had a very, very small congregation. I don't even know if we had our congregation was the other people that were like us that came to the Sunday feast, and once in a while they would sari up or shave up or something like that, but there was no real extended. Okay, Balaram Shakti, see you soon. Hopefully, Balaram Shakti says has another report. Yeah. Good luck with your new job, Balaram. Yeah, I will. So I guess not. So we really didn't have a congregation. So you were either in or out. You're either in the movement or out of the movement. And so now we have a broader vision. A lot of devotees will explain it that by Krishna's grace, through Srila Prabhupada's desire, we were able to do things that we weren't actually qualified to do, or qualified to do or to participate. In other words, like Atma was saying, you lived in the Brahmachari ashram. I remember that, Brahmachari ashram is a unique experience depending on which area you join. And but that we have to understand Brahmachari ashram, but then you have Grihastha ashram, then you have Vanaprastha ashram, and you have Sannyas ashram. This word ashram means place of sacrifice. So you have to sacrifice some part of you in the Brahmachari ashram. Something has to be sacrificed. The Brahmachari ashram is engaged solely and wholly in that specific environment. And Grihastha ashram is also meant for a place of sacrifice. Place of sacrifice means a place of purification. All of these, when we get into the 4th chapter, all these different sacrifices are meant to culminate in knowledge. Then we have that famous verse, Tadvidi Padipasena Padipasena Sevaya. But all these acts of sacrifices, of course, because it goes through the different previous verses, like the 5-10 verses previous to that verse of one must surrender to a spiritual master, describe the different types of sacrifices that the different ashrams do. But all are places of sacrifice where we are meant to advance in Krishna consciousness. So it just depends on what we're able to or willing to sacrifice. Some people can sacrifice they'll need a companion. Some people can live without a companion. Some people can live with very little. Some people need a little more. We all have our particular nature. And it's not that one is better than the other. We just have to find the glove that fits our hand. We have to find the glove that fits our hand. We have to find the ashram and the varna that fits our hand. And then we actually we'll find ourselves able to perform the devotional activities that are easier, more easily, I guess is that way to say it. And a lot of us we didn't have the right glove on. The glove was too tight, the glove was too small, the glove was too big, the glove was too this, the glove was too that. And after Prabhupada's departure, they say that water seeks its own level. So all of us found our own position. And most of us ended up getting married and having occupations. And it was, I don't know if anybody in this, Nitai Gaur, he was there in 75, 76. He was with Prabhupada in Washington, D.C. But all the BI devotees were using his apartment to take showers and go visit Srila Prabhupada, and he was also there. So I don't know if he, I guess you got a little experience of the brahmachari ashram of the brahmacharis invading the apartment. But the idea back then was very, very unique. And so we have this idea of sacrificing ourselves. We can do it in any ashram. Whatever one fits, that's the way it should be in. And there's no harm. And when I was a young devotee, if a brahmachari or a brahmacharini wanted to get married, they were considered to be like, oh, kind of Maya, what an illusion. Yeah, the illusion got them. I remember one brahmachari came to me and he said, Maharaj, why wasn't a Maharaj? And he said, Rtadhvaja, I can't control myself. And so it was like, he was doomed to hell. And I said, don't worry, just get married. Just get married. There's no harm in getting married. So he's still married to the same lady. It's been like 45 years that he's been married to the same lady. So back then it was odd for someone to say just get married. Most of the brahmachari ashram thought you should be beaten up. They used to used to have like gang fights and stuff like that. But now we've grown to the point where, like in Chowpatty in Bombay or Mumbai, I guess it's called now, Radhanath Maharaj's temple there, when a brahmachari wants to get married and a lady wants to get married, they have like a little festival or a little celebration in the temple for them taking a step up. It's a step up for them. In other words, if you're improperly situated and you become properly situated, it's a step up. It's a step in the right direction. And so now we're getting back. So yeah, it's a step in the right direction, and so it's a step up. And even in the 8th canto of the Bhagavatam, welcome Gayatri from Hong Kong. Even in the 8th canto of the Bhagavatam, it's described in the story of Gajendra, where Gajendra is an elephant and he is a land animal, and the crocodile that he was fighting with, or in a fight with, was in the water. So they were fighting in the water. So the crocodile had a better advantage because he's a creature of the water, whereas the elephant wasn't. So Prabhupada said in the commentary there that even if one has taken up the renounced order of life, if he's not well situated, take up the place where he finds strength, because at that point, I don't know exactly when Prabhupada was translating that. I remember when the books used to come out every month. It was always exciting because we would get a new Bhagavatam like every couple of weeks back then. And so my guess is someone had stepped aside from sannyas and taken up householder life, and Prabhupada said, wherever you find strength and wherever you find your ability to perform devotional service, that's where you should be. And so this is the idea that we have from this, part of the ideas we have from this verse. Some other feedback or takeaways from this. Is that Aravind from Vrindavan? Oh, supposed to used to be in Vrindavan? Is that a new Aravind?
No, Prabhu.
Is that you, Aravind?
No,
Oh, that's a new one. Okay.
is Aravind from California.
Okay, Aravind. Okay, yeah. There's other Aravind. Aravind, he's one of my boys. He lives in Alachua, and his father was a pharmacist, and he went to Vrindavan for 3 months, and so sometimes he'll pop on classes.
Okay.
Did you have any reflections from this verse, these verses in court? I've seen you sitting there patiently. Can you give us some of your vision from these verses?
No, I'm just enjoying the discussion. I also joined a little bit late, so I'm catching up. Sorry about that.
You're catching up. Oh. We were having a discussion. Where were we having? Oh, yesterday I gave a little talk for a graduating class of students. They'd been studying, I think, Bhagavad-gita for 25 weeks, once a week. There's a group of, it's a Zoom group. It's all over the country. Probably 25 kids from, I think, the age 11 to 17, like high school, middle school age. And the vision that people have, that sometimes new devotees will think we have a disadvantage because we didn't have Prabhupada's personal association, right? We didn't have really a lot of personal association with Prabhupada, and they think that something may be missing. But I remember when I joined in '75, so Prabhupada was there for about literally 2 years. My being in Krishna consciousness, maybe a little bit more. But I saw Prabhupada one time in my life, I mean for like 5 days, 6 days when I was in Mayapur. I never had a one-on-one conversation with him like this. And I saw him, I just found a picture of myself with him. Like somebody just sent to me randomly, hey, look who showed up. And I'm sitting next to the building, Mayapur building, and Prabhupada's walking by. And so I saw him walking, I saw him giving class, I saw him give darshan, but it wasn't like a lot of personal interaction other than me listening to the same thing I listen to every day when I take lunch, which is one of his lectures. And so back then, so we had this perception of Srila Prabhupada. Most of the devotees had the perception of Srila Prabhupada, as we were describing before, the Vyasasana image of Prabhupada very, very strongly preaching, but not that whole image of Prabhupada that we have now. That we have so many people opening up that had that personal association. And then we're getting a better understanding through reading Srila Prabhupada's books, through our personal understandings of our own spiritual journey, our own spiritual growth. Because I can think of dozens of verses that if I were to give class 45 years ago, I would have said A, B, C. Now I say X, Y, Z. Literally the end of the alphabet rather than, or maybe I said X, Y, Z in the past. I say A, B, C now because we have a better perception of the inclusivity that Srila Prabhupada actually had. Inclusivity that Srila Prabhupada had for everyone, and how he was more than willing to share of himself with everyone. And welcome, Cassandra. Welcome, Cassandra. Nice to see you. We're on
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
verse 20 and Gayatri on verse 26 of the third chapter. Just to keep it today. Anyway, thank you for participating in our event. And if you get a thought, please raise your hand and share with us realizations, not just one person's realization. So anyone else in this verse 26? There's just one thing I picked up. There's that verse, Vedaishcha Savar Aham Avejo. It's funny, when the verses that I know from Bhagavad Gita, when I have to read them in the Bhagavad, I can't do it. The ones I have memorized don't come out. So this is from the 15th chapter. This is the 15th verse of the 15th chapter, and which is Purushottam Yoga, or the supreme, the yoga of the supreme, and it's described that that Krishna is seated in the heart of, is seated in everyone's heart, and from Krishna comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgiveness. By all the Vedas, Aham Avejo, by all the Vedas, I am to be known, Krishna says. So all the Vedic literatures, we've discussed this many times. There's 100,000 times 100,000 verses in the Vedic literatures, or something like there's a lakh times a lakh, or however they say that in India. A verse in the Vedic literature, 96% of them are karma kanda. In other words, like that, in other words, like if you do something inauspicious and you do something auspicious to, it's called prayasita or atonement. You do some atonement to overcome that little boo-boo, that little error you make. And then you get into the Upanishads, then you get into the Vedanta Sutra, and finally the Bhagavatam and stuff like that. And so all these, even all those karma kanda sections of the Vedas, these little do's and do nots and stuff like that, they're all intended to bring one to the point of understanding Krishna. Each and every one of them, even as you go through the Bhagavatam from the first canto all the way up to the 10th canto, and even after the summary part, brings us to Krishna. It may not seem to have anything to do with Krishna, but the first canto is considered Krishna. And so we start at the lotus feet of the Lord, and we actually work our way up to the smiling face. So Prabhupada begins this purport by saying that the Vedas Chisavar Aham Adejam, but we're meant to know Krishna through all the Vedas. So Prabhupada says here that is the end of all Vedic rituals. So people are generally attached to Vedic rituals. So Prabhupada says here all rituals and penances of sacrifices and everything that is put into the Vedas, including all directions for material activities, are meant for understanding Krishna, who is the ultimate goal of life. And so this is one thing that we want to see in our life, and that is that whatever we do these activities for Krishna. Because actually, most people are inclined to perform ritualistic activities, and they enjoy those types of sacrifices. Every religious tradition has these things. Every religious tradition has their little do's and do nots. It has their little festivals for this and that. And they become attached to this because most people are attached to sense gratification. And they utilize that part of the scripture to verify or validate their engagement in material activities. And so we want it, when we come into contact with all these Vedic literatures, we want to understand that they actually point to Krishna. They really actually point to Krishna. All we have to do is search for Krishna within them. It's just like the analogy I gave before of the tape recorder breaking down. Prabhupada also gave an analogy of your car breaking down. If my car breaks down, you open the hood, you look inside, you don't know what to do, but the expert mechanic, he opens the hood, he looks inside, he moves a few things, and the car runs. I'm seeing the motor engine. So I'm seeing the engine, and he's seeing the engine, but my seeing is different than his seeing. His seeing is trained. So that's one of the things, and I've given this analogy that's almost worn out, but I'm going to give it one more time. When Prabhupada was in San Francisco in Stowe Park, the devotees asked him, what is the vision of a pure devotee? How does he see things? Is he seeing Krishna and the gopis? Is he seeing Krishna and the cowherd boys? Is he seeing like unlimited super souls occupying every atom of space? Or what is the vision of a pure devotee? And Prabhupada said, no, it's not like that. And he gave the example that I gave, that if I was at Yugala Preeti's house and I left my glasses, as I explained before, on her table, she would say, well, Mars, you forgot your glasses. It's just ultimately, it's just a pair of glasses, but because the glasses belong to me, the person will see me in the glasses. And so Prabhupada gave that example, present within everything, once we know that Krishna is the owner and controller of everything. And this is our goal of life. What is it? Narayana Namasmriti, to always remember Krishna and never forget him. These two things, the do and the do not. Remember Krishna and forget. So anything else from this purport or verse of purport? Is this okay to do it this way? I mean, I don't want to put anybody in the higher.
the way this is going, it's fantastic. And oh, sorry, the way this is going is fantastic, and I really like it. And I think Maharaj, you know, in law school they do like back 20 years ago they call on people, and a lot of people don't like to be called on. But I think the way that you do it, Maharaj, I think people feel so comfortable. Like, for example, although Arvind doesn't usually raise his hand to ask a question or comment, I'm confident that he enjoyed your prompting him to try to get him
Kind
to
invitation.
I think
kind
he enjoyed it.
invitation.
So I think, Maharaj, I don't think people feel any pressure. So please feel completely free to do
Okay.
as you've
So
been
we
doing.
have 10 minutes left. So any questions?
I see Gaurav. I think he was raising his hand.
Yeah.
Is that true, Gaurav? Gaurav, were you just scratching or were you raising your hand?
Hare Krishna.
Did you have a
Your
question or
microphone.
comment, Gaurav?
Well, no, I was just, I was scratching, but I just wanted to say sorry. Seems my microphone wasn't working earlier, so I had to disconnect and reconnect.
Lavangula, may I ask on you what your perspective of this is for these two verses? She's a Bhagavad-gita scholar that leads many groups of devotees in studying Bhagavad-gita.
I would say that it just shows how individual Krishna consciousness is. That, like, I mean, like in where were we? Where it says in 25, the purport: a Krishna conscious person does not do anything which is not conducive to development of Krishna consciousness. And what's conducive and what isn't conducive is completely unique to every individual, depending on what kind of job you do, like how you share Krishna consciousness with people. Like Yugala Preeti was saying, she works in a hospital, so that's to bring food into the hospital. Prasadam is, that's one of the things I do all the time. But other professions may have, not, that wouldn't be a way to do it. So, and then also just in that, even within our own lives, how we share can change. I just know for myself, what I did 20 years ago doesn't necessarily work the same way, because my body is 20 years older, and I have 20 years of whatever new perspectives. My body, like, that's something we say a lot, is that our body changes every 7 years, right? So the body we're in, and like what you were saying at the very beginning, I really like that about the lens, right? Because Jagannath had cataract surgery, so so we've been talking a lot about lenses, and he's my husband had cataract surgery this week, so they took out his cloudy lens and put in a clear lens, so he's seeing everything completely different. And yeah, so that lens, that the body which we experience Krishna conscious, and then the way we explain it or share it just changes with our body over time.
Yeah. I like the lens example.
Yeah.
I don't remember. Somebody told me the three primary colors the other day. What's the three primary colors? Blue, red,
and yellow.
And yellow. So they have these three different colors. And so each one of us is a unique mixture of those three colors. We all have it. Each one of us has a different mixture of the modes of material nature. Mm-hmm. And so we all have a different color of a lens that we look through. And so we can see a different vision. We can see differently. And as Lavanga was saying, how we how we perform Krishna consciousness, what's suitable for us, what's suitable for our nature, our situation, our lens, what works for us. And it's always good to feel a little pinch of austerity. It's always good to have a little pinch of austerity and a little pinch. What was there a song when I was a kid? A little pinch of sugar makes the medicine go down or something. So a little pinch of sugar, a little pinch of austerity makes the process grow strong. Yugala, you have your hand up? Thank you.
I have a question. When you give an example of the person who is you identify the person with the glasses. I mean, like you see the person in the glasses, and somehow that reminds you about presence of the Lord. Somehow I cannot put it exactly together unless the Lord gives it into your heart, the vision of that person with the glasses, and that's how you know that person left the glasses on the table. But I'm not sure exactly what you meant when you was giving this example. Not
Isha, the verse is Isha Vashramidam Sarvam Yat Kinche Jagat Jam Jagat. That everything is owned and controlled by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So everything that we see is Krishna's. And we have to, in other words, so it's just like the mechanic, or just like the mechanic who sees, right? He sees it. But how does he see that? Through training. He sees it because he's been trained to see it. So we get this information that Krishna is the owner of everything. Now we simply have to train ourselves to understand it. And how is Krishna present in the tree? How is Krishna present within the bird? How is Krishna present within anything and everything? And we can, as we go through our daily procedure, our daily, what would you say, activities, when we pause, in other words, when we pause to become Krishna conscious in our moments through our day. In other words, trying to become Krishna conscious, trying to see Krishna's hand in everything, trying to see Krishna's presence within everything. Then that's what that means. In other words, because this is an easy thing, because you've seen me here on the screen, you know these are my glasses, and so that's part of it. And so when you begin to learn that actually everything is owned by Krishna, then it's just like if I come into your house and you say, "Mi casa, tu casa." That doesn't mean I can start taking the furniture out and start taking your belongings. It doesn't mean that's not what it means. It means I'm allowed to utilize the facility that you're offering me. In the same way, Krishna is offering us this world for us to be part of, but it's Krishna's. Krishna owns it. Daiviyesha Gunamayi Mama Maya Dharantiya. This material energy is Krishna's divine energy, and it's coming from him. And although it's considered Dharantiya, it's considered a prison, which is kind of a heavy word. But we're allowed Bunje Ta Kesha Svedana. We're allowed a certain quota of what would you say, of the material energy to use for our maintenance and our sustenance. If we go beyond that quota, then we'll be held liable for that. And so we need to see everything in connection to Krishna, and we train ourselves to do that. It's just like, I'm assuming if you work in the hospital, you must have had to undergo some training to work in a hospital in order to be employed there. And so it's not like you can go in there without information. So in the same way, we are training ourselves. This Krishna consciousness movement is meant to be an educational institution. I think that's one of Prabhupada's, what is it, the seven, what do they call those purposes of ISKCON, as being an educational facility. And so we're educating ourselves to come to that point where we do Krishna present within it. What a glorious day that'll be. I'm still waiting. And I'm still being instructed. Daily reading of Bhagavad Gita, daily chanting of Hare Krishna, daily reading of Srimad Bhagavatam, daily associating with devotees, and the best part, taking prasad.
When you saying glasses, you mean wherever you look at. Glasses, it's a reminder about Krishna, basically. That's what you're saying. Wherever you look at.
I could have used this. I could have used this as an example. If I go to your house and I leave my hat on your table and I walk out, you say, "Oh, Marge, you forgot your hat," because you see me and you see me within the hat. Glasses may have been something you're trying to see.
No, glasses it's similar. I was just trying to. I understand that anything around us, any subject basically supposed to give us a reminder that this is Krishna.
It's Krishna owns it. They belong this material world. Aham Savasya Parava. Krishna is the owner of both material and spiritual world. Krishna he's the source of both the material and spiritual world. If it probably gives example, say I'll use George as an example. George is a great carpenter. So I give George all kinds of building materials to build me a room. So because he built it, does that make it his or is it mine? I gave him all the facility, but he built it. Does it belong to him or me? It belongs to me because I gave him the facility. So Krishna gave us his facility. Does it belong to me or does it belong to Krishna? It belongs to Krishna. I'm just allowed to use it. That's the example Prabhupada gives many times. It doesn't belong to the builder. It belongs to the person whom all the ingredients came from. So everything here is coming from Krishna.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we're at 7:01. Atma.
I think we could all go on and on under the shelter that you provide us, Maharaj, with the shelter of your very Krishna conscious association. But at the same time, sounds like it's probably time for us to wrap it up, so that way we can increase our desire to spend time in the association of great devotees like yourself again soon. So we can wrap up, Maharaj. If would you like to do a short kirtan like the first one, Maharaj?
I don't think my voice will do it. I almost lost it on the first one, but I could do it on the japa.
Okay, sure, Maharaj.
Is that cool, or is that legit? Or what do they call it? I don't even know what word to use. In Brazil, there's something's cool. They say legal. In other words, it's legal. Legal is a word for cool.
Yeah, I guess. Anyway, I think it would be really nice, Maharaj.
Okay. Anakadashi. Krishna Chaitanya Prabhupada Krishna Veda Arshivasi Bodha Krishna Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Rama Hare Rama Hare Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Ram Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Ram Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Ram Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Ram Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Ram Ram,
Krishna Krishna Krishna
Rama,
Hare
Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna
Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram,
Hare Ram
Hare
Ram
Krishna,
Ram
Krishna
Ram
Krishna,
Ram
Hare Hare, Ram Ram,
Hare Krishna
Hare Ram, Hare Ram,
Hare Rama,
Ram Ram Ram
Hare Ram,
Hare Krishna, Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare
Ram Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna,
Ram,
Hare
Hare
Ram,
Hare
Hare
Ram,
Ram,
Hare Ram,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram,
Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare
Hare Krishna,
Ram,
Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Ram,
Krishna Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna
Hare
Krishna,
Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare
Hare Ram, Hare Ram,
Hare
Ram,
Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna
Hare
Krishna,
Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Krishna
Krishna
Krishna,
Krishna,
Krishna
Hare
Krishna,
Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare
Krishna
Rama, Hare
Krishna,
Rama,
Hare
Rama Rama,
Hare
Hare
Ram, Hare Ram,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna,
Krishna
Hare
Krishna,
Ram,
Krishna
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram,
Hare Rama,
Hare
Hare
Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram,
Krishna, Hare
Hare
Hare,
Ram,
Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Ram,
Hare
Ram
Krishna,
Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna, Krishna
Hare Rama, Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Hare
Hare Ram, Hare Ram,
Hare
Ram
Ram, Hare Ram,
Ram,
Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna
Hare
Krishna,
Ram,
Hare
Hare
Ram,
Ram, Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Ram, Hare
Krishna
Ram,
Hare
Ram
Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Hare Ram,
Krishna, Krishna
Hare
Hare
Ram,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare
Hare
Ram,
Ram, Hare
Hare Krishna,
Ram,
Hare Krishna,
Hare
Krishna
Ram,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Ram,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Ram,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram,
Hare Krishna, Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram,
Hare Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna,
Krishna Krishna,
Hare Ram,
Hare Rama,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Ram,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Ram, Ram,
Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare
Ram,
Krishna, Hare
Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna
Hare
Hare
Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna,
Hare Krishna,
Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna
Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare
Rama, Rama, Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Ram, Hare Ram,
Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna.
Hare Rama, Hare Rama,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna.
Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare
Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare
Ram, Ram.
Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gauri Bhaktivedanta.
Ram.
Thank you for chanting with me as well.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj.
Today's
Thank you very much,
Ekadashi.
Maharaj,
Today's
for,
Ekadashi here in Texas.
that. So if
And I humbly request all the devotees present here tonight to say some prayers to Krishna for our brothers and sisters in Ukraine who are undergoing great duress. The last report I have is that the devotees are okay. They're safe at this point, but we have to keep our prayers very, very vigilant, and hopefully we'll get some information. It's hard to get resources there. We'll see what we can do. And, when the announcements come out, we'll see. We'll all have to give something to help them through this time when it comes. Please keep your prayers with these Vaishnavas this time, and when the need arises, let's all stand up and help them like we did with Crimea. When it happened with Crimea. And how does that say that? They were, the devotees really, really extended themselves. Thank you all. Thank you, Anna, for inviting me. We'll see you soon. Krishna willing.
Jai, and Maharaj, I received news that actually one devotee in Ukraine, he was actually shot. And I'll give you his, my wife is pulling the text message with his photo and name.
I had just got a message right before the class, and the last message, I don't know exactly what time it was.
Yeah, this was just she just got this about an hour ago. Oh, she saw it or was posted on Facebook. So I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, there's.
Anyway, this is.
Yeah. It's too shiny. It's shiny. Okay.
So the devotee's name today in the evening, I'm reading this. H.G. Vamshi Madhava Prabhu, Srila Jayapataka Swami's disciple, was shot in the hand and chest by a sniper. His wife is taking care of him. Their village in, I don't know how to pronounce it, Kherson, was and is under attack. There is no possibility to bring him to the hospital or call for a doctor. The message says, please kindly pray for him, his family, and for all the devotees and innocent people who are there.
Hare Krishna.
Oh my God.
That's South Ukraine, my wife says.
Yeah.
So, so we can all, put them in our prayers, all the devotees there and the people, take shelter of Krishna and get Krishna's mercy and hopefully be protected, and the devotees be protected. And Maharaj, thank you so much for your transcendentally edifying association and making us all happy to associate with devotees tonight. It made us all happy, I'm confident. So if devotees like to join me expressing appreciation for Maharaj, we can do so now. His Holiness Rtadhvaja Swami ki jai.
Hare Krishna.
And thanks for leading us in the job.